trying to get in their end zone.
Now Frerotte tries to give him some breathing room, and he's going to take a shot deep downfield, and open is Bernard Berrien, and the former Bear will go 99 yards for a touchdown. Wow.
Now, if you can watch a 99-yard touchdown and not get excited, I do not want you tuning into this interview because I am super pumped up right now. We welcome in a man that I'm so pumped to talk to. I'm ready to stick my head through a wall. This NFL vet,
easy, David.
This NFL vet played for 7 teams across 15 NFL seasons where he's accumulated 21,291 passing yards, threw for 114 touchdowns, and had a tidy 74.2 career passer rating. Ladies and gentlemen, a Pro Bowler, the legend of the 99-yard touchdown pass, and a Silver Fox, if I do not say so myself. Fear not, because we have Gus Frerotte. How's it going, man?
I'm good, David. How are you doing? That was exciting to watch. And did you hear the first guy that was talking when I was dropping back?
John Madden.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That, you know, and obviously rip to John Madden, but you know, when you think about the era you played in, and you know, he's called several of my games and how cool that was. And the 99-yarder is awesome, but to hear his voice at the beginning was kind of gave me some chills.
Yeah, to be honest, when I was like looking up that highlight last night and I saw that, I was like, this is perfect to have him call that, because I believe that was right around the time where he stepped away from the booth, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the last year or two that he was calling
Yeah, I
games.
think he was done after that year or the next year. I'm not sure when it was. So that would have been 2008, and I don't know if he retired the next year or that year. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great call and obviously a great play by you. I can't imagine when you're in the back of your end zone. I mean, it's hard to see like what's in front of you instead of also it's like 30 or 40 yards downfield. So a great play, but you're obviously, besides that great play, there's a lot to your NFL career that I want to get into. And obviously the stuff after your career you've been doing, but I would be remiss if I didn't start with your Ford City High School days. You were a letterman in football, basketball, and baseball, and you basically decided to enroll with football with the University of Tulsa. Now, I got to ask you, was it tempting first to pick a different sport, or was football always your best one? And then was a good recruitment pitch from Tulsa done to get you to go there?
No, well, football I just was a big kid, you know, and we only had 18 kids on my team. Mm-hmm. So I was like the biggest kid. I wouldn't say I was the most athletic kid, but we ran the wing tee, didn't throw it that much. But football for me, it was a challenge in high school. I broke my neck in 9th grade. I didn't play football in 9th or 10th grade, and I never played quarterback until I was a junior. And it was even scary then just because of everything I went through earlier. So I played baseball. I loved baseball. We won state championships, and I always thought maybe I had a chance at baseball. But then, and I love basketball too, but I couldn't jump. I could just box people out. And, you know, when it got to my senior year, I played football. And back then there was no Huddle. There was no internet. There was no like putting your best games on your phone and letting people see it on social media. You basically cut your best plays out and put them on another videotape and send it to as many coaches as you could. And Tulsa did recruit me a lot. I was recruited by Tulsa, Louisville, Temple, Kansas State, Michigan was early, and then they got another quarterback and they quit recruiting. But Tulsa was the best for me just because David Rader, who was the head coach, came to visit me twice, showed a lot of interest. They threw the ball all the time. You know, I was 6'5", 200 pounds back then. And, you know, it was just something that it was either go to a small school and play baseball or go to a Division I school that wasn't a huge Division I school, but where we had a lot of kids from Pittsburgh. So it made it comfortable. And so I picked Tulsa, even though it was 1,000 miles away from home. And my parents weren't super excited about that. They wanted me to go to closer to like Louisville, which was like 8 hours away, where Tulsa was like 16 hours away. So, but I picked Tulsa, and it was good for me to get out of my little town of Ford City and go to Oklahoma. It's a whole different world. You know, I had roommates that were from Philadelphia that couldn't make it there. Like they left the middle of their freshman year just because they missed home. And that wasn't ever me. I just wanted to play and get out and do, you got to see things you never saw when you were in a small town in middle Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because you really wanted to spread your wings, go out there away from the town that you grew up in, and really go out on your own and kind of have your own life away from everything. So I really respect that. And I mean, your career at the University of Tulsa, you started 8 games as a redshirt freshman, which I don't think a lot of people realize how hard it is to start as a redshirt freshman, especially as a quarterback, because redshirt freshman, usually you don't see a lot of people that are redshirt freshman year. You see them their regular freshman year. And in 1990, you obviously started after TJ Rubley was injured, finished and did really well, obviously, as the school. But you basically finished as the school's second-ranked all-time passer behind him, throwing for 5,480 yards, 32 touchdowns. And during your time in college, you actually had 2,871 passing yards as a senior, which was the most by a Tulsa quarterback in 28 years. So I got to ask you, was it more impressive to you that you were able to put up those type of numbers as a quarterback, or the fact that you were averaging 35.5 yards per punt as you handled punting duties as a sophomore?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably I love the punting duties because I just wanted to be on the field any way I could. And I punted in high school. I never left the field in high school, right? I was a kickoff guy, I was a punt guy. And the only time I wasn't on the field was on kickoff return. That was the only time I never was out there. But yeah, I think that you can't do anything alone. I had good coaches at Tulsa, taught me really how to throw the football, because wing T, we were never in shotgun. We were always under center. And then you get to college, you learn a little bit more how to be a drop back passer. Where today these kids are learning that at the age of 7 and 8, they're got a head start on everyone. But for throwing for all those yards, I had some incredible players on our team. Chris Penn, our receiver. I mean, he and I hooked up for 106 passes, I think, our senior year in only, I think, 9 games. So we were just throwing the heck out of it. But to go back and think about it, I loved being versatile and being able to punt. I wasn't a great punter, but it was. I think Coach knew I wasn't going to make a mistake back there, because I've played in games where our punters would. We were playing Oklahoma one year, and we had a punter, and we're right with them in the first half. And it was the end of the first half, and I'll never forget it. We're like, I think we're actually tied, or we're winning by 3 or something, and all we got to do is just be safe and punt the ball away. And he takes 7 steps on his punt, and they block it. They weren't even trying to block it. The guy was just there and blocked it, and then they take it back for a touchdown. Basically, the game's over at that point. And I was like, yeah, I should have stayed the punter at that point. But yeah, I love both. I just love having that leadership and that being able to have control of the game like that. It was a lot of fun, and it's a lot better than sitting and watching.
Is it scarier when you're a quarterback and you have a pass rush coming at you, or is it scarier as a punter when you have the whole defense coming at you like that when you're trying to punt the ball away?
No, I mean, you kind of know that they can't really hit you. If you get hit, then it's going to be a penalty on them. So they're trying to block it, but they're not trying to hurt you. A quarterback, they're trying to hit you, right?
Yeah.
They're not out there to block your pass. I mean, they do that, but they're more to put their helmet in the middle of your back and take you down. I mean, the Raiders and the Chargers the other night, like Justin Herbert, to me, I tweeted out that he earned the respect of anyone who loves football in that game, because he was just getting knocked in the dirt every other play. I mean, his right tackle was having major troubles, and then he'd step up. The Raiders had a good pass rush, and I feel like they didn't do anything to help him protect himself. And that dude just got up, kept throwing it. I mean, he's a big kid, strong, and just was making play after play. So the difference between a punter and a quarterback is, like, they're coming as a punter, and I think it's more stressful because you can shank one, or you can drop the ball, because nobody really notices you until you make a mistake, right?
Right.
It's like being a holder on when I held for extra points and field goals for kickers. Nobody notices you until you drop the ball or you make a mistake. But as a quarterback, everybody notices you, and that job of that defense is to put your.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I give you guys so much credit as quarterbacks because I can't imagine a defense coming down at you like they do, putting their helmets into your back, trying to basically just destroy you every single play. Before we get to your NFL career, though, I did read that you were part of a fraternity in college, the Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was. Well, it's a strange situation because usually there's a whole process that you've seen in movies and you hear about. The guy's got to join a fraternity. Well, Pi Kappa Alpha on the Tulsa campus was struggling. It literally looked like the Animal House, right? Like when you walk in, it was, there's stuff everywhere. It wasn't clean. And they had like 3 members. And so they approached it, but we knew some of those guys. And so they approached a bunch of us football players and said, look, we're just trying to get our fraternity back up. And we're trying to, be noticed on campus again and get membership back up. Would you don't have to go through any of the process. You can just be members and come to some of our parties and, hang out. So that helped them out. And we became members without having to go through all the things that you hear about fraternity guys have to go through. So I am a part of Pi Kappa Alpha, but I don't, normally do any of their stuff as an alumni. I know that they have a magazine, Diamond and Shield, and I've been in that a few times. But other than that, it was just to help the guys out at school.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask if there were any wild stories that you'd be able to tell from those days, but it's kind of cool. You didn't have to worry about any of those like initiation things that you have to do. Some are pretty wild, actually, that like even from like that you hear. But
we did enough in football. When you're a freshman and you come in, they call it hazing, but it was kind of like an initiation. And I don't know if I can get into anything that our veteran football players did to us at Tulsa. It was just a night. And, they woke you up in the middle of the night. We had a game room because we had a football dorm. All the football players, just a football dorm, which was insane. And they said, hey, come down to the game room where there's a pool table and everything. And you come down and it's the middle of the night and all the freshmen are in there, new freshmen, and they just do what they did. And it was not pretty. And you get through that, next 5 hours and then you're good. You don't have to worry about anything. But some guys hated it and some guys fought it. And it was insane. And then pretty much, later on, guys went through some bad stuff and told their parents. And then it kind of all that went out the window.
Oh man, I can only imagine what they had you guys do, but it's kind of cool. I mean, it's ultimately a bonding experience when you do that because everybody goes through it and then you get to do it to the others. And as long as it's nothing that's where like it's something that could be deadly, or something that's someone's going to seriously hurt, that I think it's fine. I don't, think it's a big deal.
Well, I'll just give you this visualization. There were a bunch of us taped up around whatever the sorority is with the anchor. We were taped up around there and we were all naked. And then you see one of our teammates, Kevin Seamster, who was a freshman, running down the street, running away from all these seniors who were trying to catch him and whatever they did to him. But yeah, that's a vivid memory I'll never forget.
Oh man, so we did get a good story from your college days there.
Yeah, I can't say too much. It was some of it was crazy.
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you, it was very interesting because you went from that and then you get drafted into the pros, 7th round pick in the 94 draft, the 197th overall pick by Washington. But it's interesting because that same draft, they selected Heath Schuler as their 1st round pick, the 3rd overall pick that draft. But by the next season, you were starting over him because of injuries and his struggles adjusting to the pro game. I'm curious, did you expect you being a 7th round pick and him being the 3rd overall pick that you would be thrust that quickly? Like, had you been seeing things in practice that made you already ready to go by that point? Or were you kind of shocked that quickly you were starting for the team?
Well, I think that what majorly happened, I mean, obviously we have, when you're a rookie, you come in kind of through the off season, but you come in later than all the other guys and you go through a little bit and you're just a 7th rounder. You just take whatever they give you and hopefully you can make the team. And then we got to training camp and he's held out. He wanted more, wanted a bigger contract. He held out. So he didn't show up for all of training camp. And I took every single one of his reps. I was the rookie on the team that year. Our other 2 guys, Pat O'Hara and John Freeze, They were the veterans, so they took the veteran reps, and all the reps that Heath was supposed to get, they gave me. And I earned the trust of a lot of guys on the team, so that when it came throughout the next year and a half or so, I was almost on equal ground with the players. Now, with the general manager and the head coach, it's not the same. A first rounder is never the same. He's, no matter what he does, he's going to be way above a seventh rounder.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes you some time, opportunity. If I would have went into my first game against Indianapolis and not played well, probably wouldn't have been a very good career for me, because you only get one shot. There's not many times they give you more than one shot to go prove yourself out there. And when I was able to go out and have a good game, I was nervous as hell. And, Heath was a good guy. I think that just some of the circumstances that he had to deal with, and being a number one, there was a lot of pressure on himself. I don't think that was the exact offense that he fit into either. He kind of would fit. I think he would do very well in like these offenses today,
Mm-hmm.
where the quarterbacks have more leeway to scramble, to run around, because he was amazing at running the football. I think he scored 21 touchdowns in college at Tennessee his senior year, just running. So, I don't know if that Norv Turner's offense fit him that well, but it gave me an opportunity, and just basically hard work and doing whatever I could, staying late, throwing as much, studying, doing all that. And that's kind of what helped me create a career.
Yeah, it's very interesting you bring up the system too, because I heard Joey Harrington talk about it on a different podcast where he said, the system that he started in didn't really work out for his skill set, but they kind of forced him to adapt to what they did. And, it didn't allow him to use his skill set. So it's very interesting, I think, in today's day and age, quarterbacks now, it's like if you draft a quarterback, you do whatever works for them because you want them to succeed. But, just, 15, 20 years ago, that's not the case. And you could see that maybe guys would do better in different systems, but it did ultimately work out better for you because you were able to keep that starting job till 98. And you even were a Pro Bowler in 1996 because you had, almost 3,500 passing yards, which is sixth best in the NFL. You also were ninth in pass completions, and you were third in the league in average yards per pass completion, a category you actually led the season before. Now, as you were starting to really just hone in on this job, did the game seem to slow down for you? Did you change any ways you prepped? Did anybody instrumental come along the way to really give you a big boost to that next step forward?
My first coach, not head coach, but quarterback coach, Cam Cameron, he and I worked closely together every day. And whatever I wanted to do, he was out there. We basically came in the NFL at the same time. So we were both rookies kind of, but he had a lot of coaching experience from Michigan. He played quarterback himself, so he knew what he was doing. And for my 3 years there, I had Cam, and it was just, I loved working with him because he was a good go-between Coach Turner and I. He and Coach Turner had a good relationship. Coach Turner had a decent, okay one. You know what I mean? Because Coach Turner's first pick that he ever made was Heath Schuler as the head coach, and the seventh pick was basically the one the GM wanted. So it's not like, not that he wasn't rooting for me. Obviously, he wanted me to do well, but I think there was just a little kind of animosity there between a first and a seventh round pick, which I get. I completely understand.
Yeah, but I mean, you ultimately were the one that was leading Washington to relevancy at that point, and ultimately you ended up going to the Lions in 1999. You played well, even though you were backing up Charlie Batch. You had an over 60% completion percentage, was fourth best in the league, an over 80% passer rating in the top 10, and you actually had the best passer rating of your career when starting 6 or more games at that point. You even started a playoff game against Washington that year. How badly did you want to win that game?
Well, it wasn't as bad as you would think because we played him in the regular season and we wore him out pretty good. So that was kind of my redemption game, if you want to say that. And then the playoffs, we just wanted to win. Like, we didn't care. We didn't start off great. I remember my fullback didn't block the guy who was supposed to block, and I got blindsided the first pass play. And, I basically, my pinky on my throwing hand was sticking straight out to the side. And I was like, oh, this doesn't look good. And I held it up in the huddle, and I was like, I'll be right. Let me call a timeout. I'm going to go get some tape on this. And they just had our number that day. We weren't very good, but I loved the Detroit team. I love being in Detroit. I wish I really wanted to stay there, but ultimately they decided that they wanted to stick with Charlie. and they asked if I would just get a basic contract. And I was like, look, I understand that, but you can plainly see I played better than Charlie, and I was in the top % in the league. I would like to, at least have a chance to compete. And for some reason, Jim Zorn didn't think so, because one of the things they said was, I screw around too much. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, you're not serious all the time. I'm like, we're here 10 hours a day. Like, you don't have to be super. I'm sure that every quarterback has a moment where they like to fool around. I was a prankster. I played pranks on people, but it wasn't mean. It wasn't like in practice. It wasn't at other times. And, some coaches didn't like that, whatever. But then I end up leaving, going to Denver, and, but I absolutely love that team. And from the minute I got there, I loved that team in Detroit and wish I could have been there a long time.
I feel like I would have loved being your teammate. I like the kind that can be very serious at times when they need to, but also can keep the locker room and everybody loosened up, have jokes to keep everybody loose. And I don't like, again, obviously I've never been in an NFL locker room, but I feel like having a good mix of both and knowing the right times of when to do and when not to do it. But I think that would ultimately be better for a locker room rather than, especially you as a leader of like a quarterback like yourself.
Well, I think too, is that the season is really long. Guys get beat up. There are lulls in the season. And, for my thing was like, you knew the guys that you could do it to because they weren't going to get mad. They'd laugh about it. You never wanted to do it to say a guy that couldn't handle it, that would put him in a bad place if you played a prank or a practical joke on him or something like that. It was just when you got to break up the monotony sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that was what I like to do. And I didn't try to be vicious. Maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick would say I was kind of vicious when I did it, but but he could take it. So he was always a good sport about it. But it was just something I loved to do. And if I ever hurt anybody's feelings or they didn't like it, I would tell, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't know that this was going to affect you that way. We're just trying to lighten the mood a little bit.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And again, just kind of going back to your career again for a second, you go to Denver, you play well in 10 games, 6 starts for Brian Griese. And again, you ball out. Like you're doing great things when you're in there. And my first question was originally going to be, why do you think it took so long for them to finally give you another starting gig? Because you eventually did get one in 2002 with Cincinnati, but they pulled you after just 3 games. And I think that's, again, this is me saying this, so you don't, if you don't feel comfortable saying you don't have to, I think it's very unfairly judging you after 3 games, after all that you did backing up these guys over these last few years. Do you felt like, again, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but do you feel like that you were unfairly given a chance for Cincinnati, showing what you have done over the last few years prior?
Well, I love Denver. My family loved Denver. I had 3 kids at that point. I have some good friends in Denver, on the team. And it was just a great community. And I didn't really want to leave. And I went to Coach Shanahan after the second season. I said, hey, I got hurt. I blew my shoulder out that year and had a rehab. And I said, hey, Cincinnati called. And I wanted to talk to the head coach about this. And I said, Cincinnati called. They would love me to come compete for a starting job. But I really want to stay here and compete here. And at that time, I'm in a sling. And I got my shoulder because I completely separated my shoulder against the Chiefs. And he basically looked at me and said, hey, you got to do what's best for you and your family. And I was like, okay, coach, all I wanted you to say was just stay here. We love having you here. You know what I mean? And at that point I was like, okay, I got to go. And Coach Shanahan had he was a good coach, but he had a lot of business side to him too. It's a business, it's not a game. It's not high school football or college. It's a business. And they're going to do what they think is best for their business and their company. And so I left and go to Cincinnati and win a job against John Kitna and Achilles Smith. But I quickly realized through training camp and things like that this organization is unlike any other I've been a part of, right? It's not as professional. There's crazy things that go on. And I wanted to win. And when I go and sit at a table with a couple of veterans who were there and I say, hey, look, what can we do to change this? What can we do to come in here and be better? And they basically laughed in my face and said, you're not going to change these guys, And so competing in Cincinnati was great. Loved playing football, loved competing against the other quarterbacks. but there were things that were stacked against you other than just playing against the defense, right? It was coming from in-house that were having poor opportunities. We had great players. Schemes were not great. The way we worked out was not great. Different things were not good. And that year was tough for me. I have to admit, I played 3 games, got hit a lot. You know, guys weren't competing like they should. John Kitna had been there. John Kitna played a lot that year. He did a really good job mentally of being able to handle the downs, because I wouldn't say there were many ups that year. And after I was benched, I went through a pretty tough time mentally and just had to deal with those things. And thank God we had Coach LeBeau, because he walked me through a bunch of that. And, I left an incredible place like Denver to go to a place like Cincinnati. No offense against Cincinnati. I loved it there, but and it was more the team aspect and everything I was going through, moving my family. But it wasn't my favorite place. And I don't know if Coach LeBeau had all the control. I think there were other people pulling the strings.
Yeah, and one of the things that I did note from your time in Cincinnati was, I don't think people give you enough credit. You were the first left-handed pass as a right-handed quarterback. Everybody talks about Patrick Mahomes, but you had the first. You switched it to your left.
Well, he completed his. I completed mine to the wrong guy. And then I completed mine to a guy I played with the Redskins, Richie Owens. Kennard Lang, I think it was. So Kennard, I threw it. He was playing for the Bengals at that time. And or he was playing for the Browns. I think that's who I threw it against. And I was just trying to get rid of the ball and not take a sack, and it ended up, the guy catching it.
But maybe he watched film. He's like, hey, if Gus Ferrotte's doing it, let me try doing it too. Like, he's got something here. He could have.
I think Patrick could probably throw better than me with both hands. So the dude's a stud.
He's something special, that's for sure. But back to your career, the last parts of your career, you bounced around over the next few seasons. You back up Dante Culpepper in Minnesota. This is when I started watching you. This is like when I started following football. Backing up Dante Culpepper in Minnesota. Then you start in Miami and you lead them to 9 wins, throw 18 touchdowns. Then you go to the Rams and you back up Mark Bulger for a couple of years. And then you finish out your career in Minnesota and you go 8-3 until a back injury forces you out. And I remember this time because I was watching the Vikings a lot. And I remember just thinking like, hey, like, I know they want Tavares Jackson to be the guy, but you were the better quarterback at that time. And I felt like it was just kind of unfortunate because that back injury, I think you could have continued to lead that team a lot better than what ended up happening there. Do you have any regrets over those last few years?
No, I mean, I worked hard. I love the Vikings. I love Minneapolis. The fans, they were incredible. That offense that we were in, that West Coast, Coach Childress offense, he came from the Andy Reid kind of tree. Darrell Bevel was the coordinator. I mean, obviously I threw a 99-yard pass with them, and it was a great experience. I was 38 years old. We're playing the Detroit Lions in Detroit. Throw a pass, it gets batted up in the air, and a D lineman catches it, and I tackle him and twist, throw him down, and break my back. Basically, on the side of your spine, there's little facets that come off, and I fractured 3 of those. And immediately, something's wrong, right? Your body protects it, and you clinch up. I couldn't even walk. And so we're playing really well. And, I'm thinking, like, I go to Coach Childress, and I say, hey, look, the doctor says, like, I can come back in a couple of weeks. So I work my tail off, go into rehab all the time and trying to get back, trying to get healthy and let my body heal. And so we got a very important game coming up. I think we were going to play the Falcons. And I know that, like, where we are in the standings, if we beat the Falcons, and then New York the next week had already made the playoffs, so they were going to not play their starters. So if we win our last 2 games, we get a first-round bye, which would have been incredible. But I worked my tail off to get back to play Atlanta. Coach said, no, I'm going to go with Tavares, rest his soul. And I said, okay, it's your choice, Coach. I'm just telling you. He goes, okay, let me see how you practice. I went out and had a great practice. Yeah, I was a little stiff, but, just making all the throws, doing everything I need to do. And after practice, I said, let's go, Coach. Let's go win this game. And he said, no, we're going to go with your kid. And I said, okay, that's your choice. So Tavares plays. We got dusted pretty well. the next week, Tavares plays against New York. We end up winning. And then we play our first playoff game. And I said, okay, coach, I'm ready to go. It's been like 4 weeks now and I'm completely healed. And he said, no, I want to continue with the kid. It's the guy they drafted. I get it. They didn't bring me in to be the starter. They brought me in to back him up. And we got crushed in that playoff game as well. And I don't have any regrets about that. I just wish he would have given me an opportunity so that we could have had a better run in the playoffs, because we had a really good team. We had incredible defense. We had Jared Allen and Kevin Williams and Pat Williams. And we just had a great team.
Yeah, that's with also Antoine Winfield was on that defense too, right?
Yeah. Oh, a lot of guys. We had Chester Taylor, former Raven, and came there. He was an incredible, third down back. We just had a really good team. We had a lot of good parts, and no offense against Tavares, but he wasn't ready.
No, I remember this is like the time I started watching, and it's just like it was easy to tell who the better quarterback was, but you're like, hey, I want to give this person time he's our future, but at the same time, like if you're the better quarterback, if your team's like, you're kind of seeing it right now with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, right? Like Trey Lance is the future, but they're starting Jimmy Garoppolo with a bad finger right now because he's giving them a better chance to win. And I feel like that's a very similar type of situation with you and Tavares, was that you were the better quarterback at that time. Maybe you're not the future, but you're the now. And like this season, you should be the one on the field leading that team. It's unfortunate that Brad didn't feel the same way, but
Yeah, well, and I wanted to stay. I had a 2-year contract, and I wanted to, and that, which in the NFL, it means doesn't mean anything, right? They can cut you anytime they want. I had a 2-year. I'm like, okay, I'll just stay. I'll be back. I'm like, I loved it here. And they're like, no, we're going to let you go. And I'm like, why? They're like, oh, we're going to sign Brett Favre because Darrell Bevel knew Brett Favre, Coach Childress knew Favre. They wanted him to come in. It was his last. He had a great year that next year with the Vikings. I'm like, just keep me here. We'll have 2 40-year-olds. Who cares? You know what I mean? Well, and Favre didn't get hurt at all, and they wanted Tavares to learn from Favre, which I get. I mean, the guy's a Hall of Famer, an incredible player. And then I went back home to St. Louis where my family was, because I commuted that year. And the doctor flunked me in my physical, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. This is it. I'm not going to be a drifter and try to go to another team and move my family for the 9th time. But I love Minnesota. That was all good. I just wish I could have played in those last 4 or 5 games.
It would have been really fun to watch. But again, a 15-year career, nothing. I mean, again, 15 years in the NFL is nothing to sneeze at. That's pretty awesome. But not only did you do good stuff in the NFL, but right now you're doing a lot of good things too. You got the Huddle Up with Gus podcast, and technically, I guess we're competitors because we're both sports podcasters doing sports podcasts. You're just obviously bigger than I am, but
I like your name, Triple Play, though. And I like your intro. It's really good.
Thank you.
Podcasting is not easy, and especially to put it out there and to make it a little different. There are a lot of sports podcasts, and we know there's over a couple million podcasts going on right now. It's crazy, how many people are doing it. So you have to make it different and interesting. And I like what you're doing. And it's just, I've been doing it since 2019. I've interviewed a lot of guests, and I'm kind of like you. I kind of focus on, what they want to do, what their past was like, and how it got them to where they are. And Huddle Up with Gus started with my good friend Dave Hager. We were just so tired of listening. Back in 2019, podcasts weren't really a thing. I think when I started, there were only 700,000, right? And there were like 60 podcasts just on knitting back in 2019, which is crazy. So my buddy Dave and I, we hated our local sports here in Pittsburgh, like the radio. Right? There was only one station that talked sports, and we just didn't enjoy listening to them. And we said, let's tell our own stories, right? There was nothing ever about the local stuff, like high schools and things like that. Now, since the pandemic and everything, more people have popped up to talk about local things and all that. And so we just started out, he and I, doing a show, and we wanted to talk to people about sports and how it shaped their life. And our first guest ever was Roberto Clemente Jr. in the Clemente Museum in Pittsburgh. And, I've known Roberto Jr. for a long time, and he came on and we talked about his dad, his family, all the memories he had. Manny Sanguian would come over, just these incredible stories. And then talking about, when his dad passed in the plane crash and all that. And, we realized at that point and he realized that he had to go through some mental stuff from all that. And he had PTSD from when his dad left and on that plane to go help and passed away, and when the plane crashed, and he still had traumatization from all that stuff. He told us, because he was never him. He was always his dad, right? When people would meet him, because people wanted to meet and touch Roberto Clemente.
Mm-hmm.
He was the junior. So he said, like, I was always people saw me as my dad and not me. And that had to be really tough
That's
for him.
heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really heavy stuff, because he would go to the museum and see the piece of the plane that they found. And, a lot of that was very traumatizing for him. And so I think he's been better since he's gotten some kind of help. But, I mean, for that to be our first guest, and Dave and I were both huge Pirates fans. We've always have been. And we've just gone through such a lull here in Pittsburgh for baseball. But we were both like old Pirate fans, like I grew up, my dad's favorite was Roberto Clemente, listening on the transistor radio on the back porch. And so just to be able to interview Roberto and ask him questions I always wanted to ask him was incredible. And there the podcast was born, and we've been going strong ever since.
I love it. I could talk with you about podcasting forever, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to get you out of here with what makes Triple Play Fantasy a little bit different, and give you the Triple Play Fantasy rapid fire questions. So these are just this or that style. Maybe you haven't heard of these. Are you game?
I'm ready. I used to do this too.
Did you do like wild questions, or were they just kind of like?
I would be like, okay, if you're gonna pick your Mount Rushmore of, whatever that person was a fan of, like Matthew McConaughey, he's a huge Redskin guy, and I said, who's your Mount Rushmore of Redskin players? And he just stuff like that. It was kind of fun.
Okay,
so well,
maybe I'll give you some new ones here for you. So, number 1, pancakes, waffles, or French toast. You got to rank them.
For me, it's probably pancakes, French toast, and waffles.
Really? Pancakes number 1? Okay.
Oh my God. I go to Original Pancake House, and they have their 49er flapjacks. Those are my absolute favorite ones.
I've never heard of those, but those sound pretty good, whatever they are.
Oh yeah. Well, my kids like waffles, so we eat waffles a lot, but they're not my favorite.
All right. Second one. You got to play 1/4 of NFL action right now, or you got to shave your head and your hair does not grow back.
Well, I have a terrible head, so I've already got a bunch of injuries, so I just play 1/4 in the NFL. And I was a backup, so that means I'd be sitting on the bench. So that's perfect.
That's fair enough. That's a good loophole. Rather do laundry or do the dishes?
Well, my wife works full time, so I do both. Let me see. The dishes are way easier because you just rinse them off and throw them in a dishwasher. Laundry is like taking it from the washing machine, putting it in the dryer, taking it out and folding it. And like, there's always a pile. Like my boys are home. They both graduated from college, and they're trying to find jobs in their respective fields. And it's tough. The world's tough out there right now. And it's like, can't you guys just like take your clothes and put them like from the washer to the dryer? It's not that hard. And they're just sitting there, and it drives me insane. So I got to go do it.
But the only thing that's,
so I would say dishes.
The thing with dishes, like imagine you have like a big like lasagna dinner or something, and then you see in the sink there's like, it's so full to where it's like over the sink level, where it's like on top of the sink. That gives me anxiety. I don't know, like laundry doesn't give me that same type of.
No, it's not bad because it gives me a little break. But most of the time, like my wife is ingrained in the kids so much about how like don't leave a dirty dish in the sink, at least spray it off so it's not like baked on there. And then the lasagna dish, we've learned now, like just spray the pan or put something down so nothing sticks. Like that's nothing worse than like you have a sheet pan or a lasagna pan. It's just overcooked, burnt, and you just can't get it off anymore.
Yeah, that's giving me just some anxiety just thinking about it. All right, would you rather fulfill your biggest wish or resolve your biggest regret?
I fulfill my biggest wish. I don't really have many regrets in life, but obviously we know probably the one I'd like to take back. But as far as a wish, one thing that my wife and I want to do that we really wish for is we haven't really traveled the world, and we'd like to do that.
Oh, that sounds really awesome. All right, a couple more for you. Would you rather be able to speak to animals or every language in the world?
Speak to animals. When you want to know what your dog's thinking or saying right now, like
100%.
We have a miniature. We have like they call him a pocket pit bull, and she's a year old, and she literally thinks that she's going to talk one day because she just like she's always talking and like, making these weird noises. We're like, oh yeah, she's going to speak one day. Like really. But I think we'd love to hear what animals would have to say. I mean, because we have like you just go, hey Siri, what did they say? And like there's a translator on your phone and you can pretty much translate every language anyway.
That's a really good point. Like, yeah, like in today's day and age, speaking of, like, you can literally whatever you want to say, you can figure it out.
Yeah, you can't put your phone up and say, hey Siri, what did Fido say? You know what I mean? She's going to be like, oh, he's barking.
I don't know, maybe give it another 10 or 15 years. We might be at that point with how technology.
That's true. I'm sure the University of Pennsylvania is going to figure it out at some point.
All right, give you two more. Would you rather wake up with $1,000 under your pillow every day, or every day you get to wake up with a new superpower?
Ooh. I mean, but does your superpower continue, or does it just go away? Like you only get it for one day?
You get each superpower for one day. So like, let's say you have super speed, and the next day you wake up with super strength, and the next day you wake up, you can fly. But like you get a new one every day.
I have super aches and pains, so that one, I do have that one every day. No, I mean, I think obviously you can make money. You can't have superpowers, so I would definitely take the superpowers.
That's what I would do too. I like that. Last one. Would you rather be the best in the world at one thing or be good at everything?
Well, I think that's the problem with a lot of people. They think they're good at everything, so you get kind of lost in the mix. I think if you're good at one thing, it's really good for you and all the people around you. So I've had that issue as well. Like I want to be really good at my podcast, but I also love to consult and do a lot of other things. So I think just being good at one thing would be incredible.
I completely agree with that one. And on that note, Gus, man, I appreciate you taking almost an hour to come sit with me today, talk about our podcast, talk about, some this or that, obviously talk about your incredible career. Really appreciate you, man.
No, I appreciate you having me on. And I gotta ask you, let me know what I gotta say to people to come on and help me with the show, because I mean, if I had some more help, we'd be blowing this thing out of the water.
We just put it out on Twitter, and then we just had some interviews over what we're on now, so StreamYard, and we just have calls to say, hey, this is the opportunity that you'll have, like potential for monetary income at some point. But, for right now, you have a good platform. You get to talk with great people. You get to be part of something great, and people.
So are you the only one that interviews?
Me and then my brother do most of the interviews. A couple other guys hop in every once in a while, but it's mostly
who's the better interviewer, you or your brother?
By far, me. By far.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Is he older or younger?
He's younger than me. He's 2.5 years younger.
Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. You better tell him that he's got to step up his game.
Hey, I appreciate that, Gus. Thank you so much, man. And before we get out of here, please, can you plug again your great podcast? Because again, people need to make sure they tune in.
Hey everyone, it's Gus Frerotte, host of Huddle Up with Gus. Hey, I want you to come out and check my podcast out, Huddle Up with Gus. You can find me wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, or you can go to my website, huddleupwithgus.com, and you can find all my episodes and other things. I have a clothing line on there that you can go to and check out clothes. I'm terrible at graphics, but they say Huddle Up with Gus, and if you like that, you can get one. But check me out at Huddle Up with Gus, or you can find me on social media at Huddle Up with Gus or at Gus Frerotte. Again, great guy, great career, great podcast. I'm looking better in the sun or in the shade. I think the shade's way better. So in Pittsburgh, it's probably a little bit like Baltimore's a little more sunny, but Pittsburgh, it's always gray. So where I sit to do these shows, it's never like the sun. But today there's no clouds for